Hello, this is Mrs. Silvagnoli, and this is your PowerPoint on conflict. So we face conflicts every day. Some days we face external conflicts, like if we get in an argument with our parents or our friends, or it could be a struggle with a computer that is just not cooperating at all, or even the weather. So in a story, in literature, there are conflicts. If you think about characters, characters face conflicts just like people do. I mean, after all, characters are supposed to reflect human beings. So what is a conflict? A conflict is the struggle or problem in the story. So you have these external conflicts, just like real people do, and the struggle takes place between the character or person and an outside force. That could be another person, it could be society, it could be technology, it could be the weather, etc. People also face internal conflicts. Do I go to the party? Do I stay home? I like Bobby, but so does my friend. What do I do? So just like real human beings, characters also face internal conflicts. And this is the struggle that takes place within the character or person. It could be emotional or psychological. So conflict must have two or more sides. So with external conflict, it's a person versus another person, two people. Could be a person versus technology, a person and an item. It could be a person versus the weather. If it is internal, you still have to have two sides. Might be one emotion versus another. Do I love the person? Do I hate the person? One solution, idea versus another. Do I pick door number one, door number two, door number three? Could be right versus wrong, more of a moral dilemma. Conflict is not an emotion inside a person like fear, happiness, or anger. It needs to have that second side. So these are just emotions. I'm afraid. There's not an opposing side. I'm sad. There's not an opposing side. These are not conflicts. I am mad. Again, not an opposing side. So just because you have an emotion, you feel an emotion, doesn't mean that it is a conflict. Now, a lot of times the character's feelings are linked to an emotion, and the conflicts are caused by an emotion, but the emotion is not the conflict. Furthermore, internal conflicts and external conflicts are often related. The external conflict often forces the main character to have an internal conflict. This forces the main character to make choices that result in positive or negative outcomes. And this is what drives the story. You can't really have a story without some sort of conflict. So why is identifying conflict important? Well, number one, the entire plot is based around conflict. You can't have a story without conflict. If you think of any movie or any book that you've ever seen or read, even in Harry Potter, there are both internal and external conflicts. You've got the external conflict when he argues with his friends, the obvious conflict with Voldemort. You have the internal conflicts including wanting to belong but not having parents, being too different from everyone else, but wanting to measure up to people's expectations of him, but not having the confidence to do it. Okay? And then number two, how a character deals with the conflict gives you insight into the character. So if a character chooses good over evil, it tells us something about that character. If a character decides to sneak out of the house to help a friend, we know that character's priorities. So this is just like drawing conclusions or making inferences about people that we know, looking at their actions, looking at what they do or what they say. So when people face a conflict, we judge how they resolve that conflict, and when characters in literature face a conflict, we as a reader should also be making conclusions and drawing inferences about those characters. And number three, conflict helps the reader figure out the theme. Look at the conflict and the outcome to figure out the topic the author wants you to focus and how the author feels. Is it a bad outcome? Is it a good outcome? About that topic. So again, once you know the conflict and how the character deals with that conflict, you can make inferences about the theme. And so if there's a conflict and the conflict deals with peer pressure, and the character gives in to peer pressure and there is a bad outcome, then that gives us as the reader an idea of how the author wants us to feel about peer pressure. It gives us an idea of that theme. How to identify conflict? So remember, conflict always has two sides. So if you look at the yellow box, this is a question that you're going to be asking yourself as you read. What struggle, problem, issue, debate, etc. does the character have? What are the two sides? So let's take a look at an example. Should she proceed more slowly instead of rushing the situation? Should she take the southerly route, avoiding the icebergs, or the northerly route, the Faustus route? So if you look at this, she's trying to make a decision. There are definitely two sides. This is going to be an internal conflict. We look at the next example. Paul's dad is driving him and his friends to a big football game in town. Although they left him plenty of time, the dad seems to have lost his way. Paul thinks he saw the football field a couple of blocks back. When he tells his dad says, "Who's driving, you or me?" Paul then yells back, "But it's over there." So this is an external conflict. You have two people who are having an argument. Our next example, after lowering himself into the damp and dark cave, Tom was afraid because he forgot to replace his flashlight batteries. Now this is neither an internal or external conflict. Again, just because you are afraid doesn't mean that you have a conflict. Now this could turn into a conflict, but as of right now, there is no conflict. So now you try. What I would like you to do is pause the video, read the example, and then try to answer questions 1 through 4. When you think you have some good answers, restart the video and we will go through it. So hopefully you pause the video and you have some good answers. And let's take a look at number 1. What is one internal conflict? Well, one is his own fear versus his pride. So we have that he is afraid, but he also wants to prove something. Another one is him wanting to go through with it versus wanting to run towards the exit. So we have that exit sign flashing ahead of him and he's thinking about it and then he doesn't know if he should go through with it. It even says now he just couldn't go through with it. So he's talking about persisting, but he doesn't know if he should go through with it. So hopefully you have two internal conflicts that are similar. For the external conflicts, one is him versus the robot. I mean, it's obvious that he is caught by this robot. He is trying to evade the robot. The robot is after him. There's an external conflict here. There's a confrontation. We also have his friends. At the beginning, his friends place some peer pressure on him to do it. You can see how the external conflict with his friends and his internal conflict of fear and pride relate. You can also see how his external conflict with the robot goes along with his desire to go through with it and his desire to flee. And so there is definitely a relationship between internal and external conflict, but internal is what's going on inside the person. And again, it's going to have two sides. External is going on outside of the person. All right, so for this last slide, what I would like you to do is decide if each of the following statements is an internal conflict, external conflict, or neither. And place the answers on a separate piece of paper because, again, your teacher may require you to turn in your answers. Good luck, and I will see you at school.